All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Fati Mendoza, Director of Alumni Affairs. I'm here with CHCI. I'm really excited for today's webinar that is so timely for the time of the year we are now wrapping up, a lot of our work, school, all of our responsibilities. So it couldn't come at a better time. So we're really excited to have Mario Enriquez today leading us in what's going to be an interactive webinar on resilience and mindfulness. Before we get started, I do want to thank our sponsor, State Farm, for making today's webinar possible. And before I hand it over to Mario, I want to share a little bit about him. So a little bit about Mario. He currently serves as a higher education administrator at the University of the Pacific. For the past decade, Mario has developed a wealth of experience in the nonprofit sector, LGBTQ plus political advocacy, and youth leadership development. Mario most recently engaged and informed the nation's network of LGBTQ elected and appointed leaders at the Victory Institute in Washington, D.C. In 2010, Mario first moved to Washington to work for Unidos US, formerly National Council of La Raza, the nation's largest Latino civil rights organization. Additionally, Mario is a proud alumnus of two nationally competitive year-long fellowships, the Coro Fellows Program in Public Affairs in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute based in DC. Mario received his bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California, and a master's in public administration from the USC Price School Public Policy in Los Angeles. So we're really excited to have an alum leading today's webinar. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Mario.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you again, Pati, for this opportunity. And it's always wonderful to be with fellow CHCI alumni, other community folks who may be here in the webinar. Really appreciate y'all's time. And as the staff mentioned, it's really important that, as we wind down from the year, we can just take a moment to reflect, think about all the things we've experienced personally, professionally in our lives, and also to kind of gear up for the year ahead. So I know for myself, I always like to get into reflection mode in December. It's my favorite time of year, knowing that, even though it's literally the end of the year, it also gives us a time to ground ourselves, especially for so many of us who are young millennials, might be in the same age range. Many of us are college graduates, so many of us are used to this winter break feeling of like, okay, I'm in between semesters, right? I'm in between and preparing for the next thing. So I think even just naturally we have that mindset already. Want to be able to just quickly give a layout of the agenda, really diving into briefly introductions, but giving some overview and some frameworks. Talking a little bit more about what resiliency is. And I think when it comes to that, it's also different. I think all of us determine and define resiliency in many different ways, especially with our own lived experiences. And then really having the chance to dive into small breakouts, as Pati mentioned, we want this to be interactive. So giving you all the chance to, maybe we'll probably split into two groups, depending, or maybe one group together, but a chance for us to share a little bit about ourselves, and kind of how we tackle self-care. What that looks like for us, and then we can talk about next steps for 2023, and then we can provide a conclusion at the end. But first, with introductions, just want to kind of lay out that I'm not a practiced counselor. I'm not, trained in that art. The actual topic itself is really a chance for us to, again, reflect and think, and I'm happy to be here as a facilitator, provide my insights, not to say that they're the one and only, right? I think all of us, and I'm really excited to learn from you all about what strategies you all take upon yourselves when it comes to, again, building resiliency, whether it was something that we sought or something that was thrown onto us. right? When we think about our families and the responsibilities that we have to take on, and when we think about sacrifices of our families, of um, families, friends, mentors, of what they've done for us. So I think that is also something we need to take into consideration when it comes to building, defining resiliency. If you can get to the next slide, please. So I know there was a brief introduction. I think this is also helpful. Again, I'm going to give some quick bullets, but even in your own time, something that I found really useful, even when it comes to introductions or laying out all the work you've done, something that's I found to be really powerful, and it's based on a little bit odd, is that I would always, since graduating college and even in college, I would always have notebooks. Sometimes I would write the same thing over and over again, and it's almost like a way to hype yourself up. So whenever I look at introductions, I wrote this slide in particular, right? It's also nice when we think about self-care is to celebrate, and celebration is so important when you think about all the great things you've accomplished in your life up until now, right? And knowing that we all got to this certain point in our lives from, our own determination, our work ethic, our the mentorship we've gotten from family, community members, mentors, those around us that care about us in our tribe, right? Our the village that supports us. And I found that in my own experience, constantly writing the goals that you want to do, but also writing down the successes that you've done, I think just helps kind of put that in your mind more and more in a way that doesn't make it seem, oh, I'm full of myself. Why am I constantly writing successes over and over again? But sometimes we need to be our own cheerleader. Sometimes we need to have our own space to affirm our celebrations, our accomplishments, rather than, some folks might say, well, I don't want to constantly say it out loud to a group of people because I don't want to come off as, whatever, right? I don't want to come off as pompous. I don't want to come off as someone with a big head or arrogant. But that's not necessarily a bad thing too, right? Um, so I wrote these bullets because, and I would encourage you all to also do the same if you haven't already in your own day to day. Journaling is really great, whether that's weekly. If sometimes I would write down goals and accomplishments, and I would constantly write it like on a weekly, monthly basis. And sometimes I have pages of the same thing, and a lot of it ends up being what you see on the introduction slide, right? Um, to sometimes when we have that imposter syndrome kind of creep over us, and we think, we kind of get into this natural comparison at times with, oh, so and so has done this at this age. What am I doing? I'm sure many of us have got into that point. I'm not sure, but I know I have. Um, and thinking about again the experiences and why they're important to celebrate is that sometimes you need that for yourself to keep you energized and going. There's a lot of things that we carry, and I always love December because it also gives you a chance to kind of unpackage that. So when I think of these introductions, and we'll have time in our breakouts, is really kind of thinking like the key highlights, right? If someone was to ask you what are 4 to 5 main accomplishments of your life, and if you have time to think about that, you can start writing already. What are those 4 to 5 accomplishments? If I had to share something, right? Um, I think about our networks. How do you access networks? How do you build networks? Um, Naturally, I think in this room, right? I wrote CHCI, not just because it's a CHCI presentation. It's led by the staff and the organization, but also knowing here us in the room that this organization really does provide us not only with an experiential learning that we can take on for the rest of our lives, but we also get a network of people, right? People with lived experiences that are similar to ours, similar values, similar insights that, again, 20 years down the road when we're all at the CHCI gala, right? We have some similar shared experience that we can relate to, even if we may have not been part of the same cohort, if that makes sense. So for me, that was really one of my uh, career defining experiences to be part of CHCI. I did the graduate fellowship in 2016, shortly after graduate school. And then now working here at the university, which is my undergraduate alma mater here in California. But a lot of these other experiences, right? When we think about and also for yourselves, right? I think journaling is important because as you're writing down all that you've done, you're also writing down things such as internships, fellowships, positions you've been at, professional jobs you've been at, right? You start to list all these things, and it's almost like a bulleted version of a resume, right? You constantly have that resume, you constantly edit it along the way in your career and your life, but to be able to really think about these core experiences and how they helped you, it's also really grounding at the same time. So, when I think about being fresh out of college or maybe fresh out of a fellowship, it could be maybe you just finished CHCI or you just got out of a job or you're transitioning or you're moving. You want to think about all the skills, lessons, challenges you gain up until that point, and what are you going to do with those experiences, right? The good and the bad, the challenging, to this next phase of your life. I found it also very challenging as well to think about the go, go, go mentality, right? I know for many of my Latinx friends, first gen friends, it's always that feeling of like go, 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 right? You're hustling, you got to pay the next bill, you got to meet the next deadline, you got to apply for the next program, the next fellowship, right? It's always about bettering ourselves for other people. I know that's a mentality and a mindset I've always gotten myself into, and I highlight these experiences because these were very um, taxing experiences, right? Rewarding, but also taxing if you're, again, right, if you're doing programs such as CHCI or you're working or you're doing trainings, there's always a certain set of deadlines, expectations, professionalism that you kind of have to follow and meet in terms of your program requirements, right? And with that, I think it's just good to come into community, which is why I'm really happy that we are having this time to be able to convene and discuss our own experiences. Um, and then if we can go to the next slide, please. Um, this is something that even up until now took me a long time to accept and be more grounded and better at, is just really taking a moment, right? Um, Taking a moment to recognize that self-care isn't selfish. Um, how many of you all, since now that you're kind of winding down for the holidays, how many of you all have had a chance to relax? And if you all can do like a thumbs up, or how many of you feel relaxed right now? If y'all want to do like a thumbs up. How many of y'all would say are currently stressed at the moment? Yeah. Okay. So the thumbs up came up when we talked about stress, right? A lot of us are stressed, right? I think we're still in near the end of the year, maybe programmatically with our work, our professions. The holidays are almost there, but not there, right? Um, but I would definitely would love to invite you all to, um, take a deep breath. Um, there's so much power in our breath, in our movements, paying attention to our bodies. Um, if we all can join me really quickly, and I'll stop briefly, but maybe next 20 seconds, just take a deep breath. Think about how your body feels when you pause and take a deep breath and exhale. Think about what your body's telling you, how you're feeling when you do take a deep breath. What does your mind go to when you're taking a deep breath? Do you think about being on the beach? Do you think about being with your friends, having a glass of wine, watching Netflix? Or do you think about the stresses in your life? But hopefully, right, with the moment of doing deep breaths, listening to your body, you're thinking of not that, right? You have that moment where you have to yourself. Um, hopefully leaning on thinking about something positive. And that can be very challenging for many of us, as I mentioned before, right? We can tend to be in go, go, go mode. We can think about the next set of deadlines we have in our work. But really being able to take a moment is really important in our day to day. And I'm excited to hear, and as we go delve into our discussion of what that looks like for you. What is taking a moment like for you? If there's anything off the bat that you want to share now, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll obviously have this in discussion, but if you want to, again, feel free to drop any comments, share the chat, utilize it as you wish along the way. So that would be very appreciative. But this is a quote that, not a quote, but a statement that I've always found to be very important, and something that I've come to realize just until recently. Again, right, the mindset of, well, if I'm not doing things for other people, if I do things for myself, that's selfish, right? That was the mindset that I had for a long time. And then, as I'm getting older, and in my work and in my career, right, learning that, sometimes I do need that time for myself. Sometimes I do need to just say no. Sometimes I do need to actually just delegate a task. Sometimes I am going to use that paid time off and not go to work. Sometimes I am going to use that sick day and say, you know what, this is a self-care day. I'm going to use my sick day. I have sick days for a reason. I'm going to utilize my sick days, right? I think for a long time I've had this guilt of using it, of doing certain things that I would feel like guilty, right? If I missed out, if I wasn't doing something with community, if I wasn't, thinking of the next thing. But for me, I always love December, kind of that New Year, Christmas time. It's always my favorite time of year because it really helps prepare me for the year ahead. But again, really just think about what you do when you do take a moment for yourself, and that whatever you do for yourself is important and it's valued. And if that means having to write it down, I encourage that. Like I said in the beginning, I constantly write things down, even if it's repetitive. I think it just ingrains in my mindset the things I need to do for myself, and then also the things you need to do for your loved ones, your work, your mentors, your mentees, things like that. Next slide, please. This is just a quick snippet. I thought I'd share this. I know it could be different for everybody, but again, as we kind of delve into this, before we go into breakouts, so we're going to go into breakouts in just a little bit, but these are just some tips, some things that, when we think about all of us who have different jobs and responsibilities, right? You might be busier some days of the week, sometimes throughout the year. But these are really kind of some of my favorite self-care and 5-minute tips, things that are just helpful. It could be something as simple as make sure you're drinking water, right? I'm bad with always drinking iced coffee, and sometimes I forget to drink water, and that's my personal issue. That's my goal of drinking more water. But having a snack, making plans, listening to music, making your bed, decluttering your office, your room, any sacred space that you find, at peace and relax is important. Cleaning your car, maybe. Taking a moment to watch YouTube videos, maybe TikToks, doodling. And again, one of my favorites is writing affirmations / kind of journaling, or just writing down goals and accomplishments and, tasks or how I'm feeling. But these are all things that you can easily do in just a couple of minutes. Anything that helps clear or organize your Zen, your environment, is helpful along the way. But I'd love to hear if any folks have any kind of self-care things that they do in 5 minutes, something that they agree with, something that they like that stands out from this list that they do themselves. Would be really cool to hear from you all on that. I'll give you all just a little bit of maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and then we'll dive into our, oh yes, coloring books. Yes, coloring books, music. Yes. I know during the pandemic those were key. Yes, on the coloring books and the Spotify, Pandora, all that. Podcasts. I love it. Yeah, many folks, especially podcasts, I know a lot of folks listen to them on the way to work if they're driving. If they have time off in the mornings, at nights, any good recs would be much appreciated throughout the convo. Appreciate it, Guillermo. Thank you, Pati. Thank you, Liberada. Stretching out. Yes, yes, exactly. Taking time to walk. Ooh, the process of making an espresso. I love it. Amen. Yes, on walks, taking even 10-minute walk, going out, recharging, unplugging. That helps as well. All right, I really appreciate it. So this is our time now for us to dive into breakout groups. But let me know if whichever makes sense. We'll probably whichever evenly divides the group. But in the next slide, we will have an opportunity to talk again, brief introduction of who you are, maybe your name, where you live, what CHCI program you did. How are you feeling currently as you come into this space? And that, of course, that's however you feel. That'll be how you feel as you are on the Zoom, where you are today, right? How you're feeling on December 13th, 2022. An insight of what you do for self-care would be wonderful to hear. And then kind of just a goal for yourself, a goal for the year ahead would be really great to hear. And then we'll give you all that time, maybe 10 minutes or so as we break up. And then maybe we'll come back. And then if folks want to share kind of general insights that they heard from one another, and then from there we can kind of go into a bigger discussion for the hour, if that makes sense. But if folks have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself before we break off. That way we make sure we capture all that. All right, perfect. And then just give us a couple seconds and then we will break you up into the rooms.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and put folks in rooms, and we'll drop the questions in the chat as well. Just so, unless you took a screenshot.
Thank you all again for that chance. I'm really happy that you all got a chance to talk amongst yourselves. I want to be able to bring it back to the larger group. I wanted to kind of delve into time for us to share as a group collectively, and love to hear from you all. Maybe one key highlight or takeaway from each group. That way we'll have at least 4 kind of key highlights from what you all talked about. And whoever would like to go group first, that'd be fantastic.
I was in room 1. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, room 1.
So hi, I'm Adriana from San Antonio. Something that I would like to continue. So I've been doing yoga for a year and I would like to continue that. And one of your mentions was about snacking. I work from home. I snack too much. So I need I need to, change, incorporate a healthy diet, right? So that is really something that I need to do. And I put it on the chat. Jose has like a deck of cards where it's like self-reflection cards. If you could share that, because that seems pretty cool. Something where it gives you a pause. Made me think. So yeah, that I would, Jose, I want to borrow that from you or look it up or buy it online. But yeah, so I do yoga, continuing with that, and actually modifying my diet for because sweets are my vice.
Great, wonderful. No, thank you, Adriana, for sharing from group 1. And yeah, Jose, if there's anything that I just see 1 second. Got you. Yeah, any links, Amazon, whatever we can do to buy that'd be fantastic. Something that we can share. We all can share after this discussion. Thank you again, Adriana and Jose. If group 2, and apologize, I didn't know the group numbers, but if group 2 would like to go first, next.
I think we were group 2. So I would say we're group 2. I think one commonality that we had is just trying to find and setting boundaries. I think is crucial and important, especially going into the next year. I think we all are guilty of trying to set them and then flexing a little bit. So I think that's something that to think about for all of us, is to set those boundaries, especially when it comes to work.
Absolutely. No, thank you.
And Guillermo gave me a great podcast to give a listen to, the Life Coach School. And one of the things that I struggled with was failure in a sense. And he recommended one of the podcasts in there that touch base on that, which I'm excited to listen to.
Oh, fantastic. No, thank you. You said it was the Life Coach School?
Yes, and I think it's on Spotify.
Oh, awesome. Oh, thank you. All right. Group 3, or someone who hasn't shared, which group hasn't shared yet?
This is Librada, and Pam and I were in the same group, and we talked about how it's very easy to focus on work and identifying goals for work, right? But that for the personal side, it's a little bit of a challenge. And so I was mentioning to her a resource that I've developed for my coaching clients, but something personal that I'm really being intentional about is just experiencing joy. And I was sharing with her that having a conversation with her was what brought me joy today, or one of the things that brought me joy, and not just waiting to, that I've achieved the goal, but really while in process or while in progress. And then something that I do personally is that when I'm consistent about it, what I've done is that I've created, it's got like 8, 9 questions, but it's just my own daily reflection. And so I've just a handful of questions that I go through just to help me figure out, like what are my top of mind worries, and what might get in my way, and what is it that I need to focus on. And then it's also like, what is it that I want to remind myself of? So an affirmation of sorts. And then what will I prioritize today, so that when I get confused or derailed or whatever, it's like, no, remember, like ground yourself in that. And so that's been when I am on top of it, it's been helpful. So.
Fantastic. No, thank you. No, that's very insightful, and really appreciate that. That group, you all kind of highlighted our worries, prioritizing ourselves, grounding ourselves, right? Really finding that ability to what brings you joy. How do you ground yourself in times, and also not thinking that, right, it's not always prioritizing our work, but also just our personal lives as well. And sometimes I'm at fault at forgetting that at times as well. So thank you for bringing that to light, Librada, into your group. And I believe the last group, could be wrong, I believe it's Elizabeth and Alexis.
Yeah, I can go ahead and share. Elizabeth and I talked a lot about being intentional come 2023, about holistic well-being. So thinking about, like our mental health, our physical health, our financial health, relationships, things like that. And she shared her tools of kind of doing a vision board and kind of preliminary research or like planning with an Excel first before she gets to do the fun part. And then we connected about, maybe accountability coast to coast, as she's in Cali and I'm in DC. So that was a fun connection as well.
Oh, I love it. It's like accountability buddies. Oh, that's fantastic. Great. Well, no, and kind of before we go on to the next piece, I know we have about 10, 12 minutes, but any other highlights or takeaways that folks want to share from their small group discussions? Oh yeah, Librada.
I would say that one thing that Pam and I had in common is that we just have to give ourselves permission to explore, to try new things, because, like I remember when everybody's like, we gotta do yoga. I've tried yoga, and either I haven't found the right teacher, or just my body's not willing to do what it needs to enjoy it. And so it's like, instead of beating myself up for it, right, it's, well, like walking I can go for miles. So that's what I'm gonna enjoy. you know, so basically just finding what works for you, be open to what others are suggesting, but then give yourself permission to, you know, either have it work for you in your own way or find something else.
Yes.
No, absolutely. No, thank you, Librada, and thank you, Adriana, for the comments on the YouTube online yoga class. So that's great.
I would just like to say I do this with my daughter. I should be doing it with myself. Kind of at the end of the day, just to help ground you, think about what 3 things went well. So it doesn't matter what kind of day it is, something always like try to highlight the positive. We have to hunt for that. Moreover, ask yourself the follow-up question of how did I contribute to those 3 things? Because we're always the hardest on ourselves, and you know we need to lift ourselves up as well. And I think that's a good practice to have. I need to incorporate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thank you. And you're right. Being kind to ourselves, giving ourselves permission to know that, you know, just being kind to ourselves, right? Knowing that sometimes there's so many hats that we wear and sometimes not everything's going to go right, but, you know, kind of pushing forward and finding ways to forgive ourselves and be gracious and kind to all that we have to carry on, all the weight that is on our shoulders. Wanted to briefly move on, and this is a great, I think many of you, actually, one of you highlighted it really well. There's many versions of this. I believe, Alexis, in your group, you may have mentioned it specifically with the holistic well-being. This is one model, this is one framework that the Olga Phoenix group has been doing since the early 90s. This is a 1996, so it's a little old school, but still has been instrumental in thinking about self-care as an individual or in larger groups. But this is a good way to kind of really break down the different areas that we need to give attention to or should be giving attention to it in our day-to-day, whether that's our physical or psychological, our emotional, spiritual, personal, and professional. And I'll be dropping the link. Again, I know with time, but I want to be able to provide this link if folks want to delve deeper in. Positive Psychology is one of my favorite websites with resources. There's in that link itself, it gives a better overview of the wheel, but this is just a good visual representation of the different areas, but also within each area, what are some action items or some activities you can do to kind of help ensure that you're addressing or supporting each of these areas in your life. And we'll love to, again, challenge you to look into this wheel. Maybe if you look at each one, you can say, wow, I can do at least one of these from each area, right? And make it my goal that, you know, by the end of January or by the end of February, I would have at least done one of each, right? And then kind of being able to reflect and look back at this. But there are many kinds of different formats of a self-care framework identifier. This is one of my favorite go-tos when I personally use this a lot, and I write in a lot of my areas when it comes to this. But the website itself also has activities and actual worksheets. So you can always do this by yourself, and you can also do it in groups if you like. So again, if there's any other resources or links or websites that you all utilize for self-care, especially addressing the holistic self-care that many of you have already addressed. Thank you, Alexis. I see the howtomeetyourself.com, also another great website. Yeah, any resources, please share them. We love to hear it. We love to see it. So really appreciate y'all's insights when it comes to these tools. Yes, Librada?
A tool that I have that I share with my coaching clients, and I'm like, oh wait, I didn't think about it because y'all are my clients, but that I'm happy to make available is I have what I call a wellness menu, and I don't know if you can see it, but basically it gives you different prompts. And it has you thinking about 8 different areas. And the reason why I created it is so that as you think about building on the wellness menu idea, it's like, what are starters? What are quick, short activities that you can do under one of those areas? Another is the main course. So something that takes a little bit more time, but is maybe under 30 minutes and is filling. And then the desserts, which are longer, require more time, and are a special treat when you have more time. But the intention with this is so that you write it down and then you're like, what am I going to do? Or I don't know what to do. If you have it in front of you or somewhere, then you can choose from it instead of like spending time trying to figure out, well, ¿qué me gusta? You know, what do I want to do? Then you have it, and it might prompt you to try this for yourself. So I'm happy to make that available, if that's helpful.
That'd be great. Yeah, no, thank you. I'm a very visual person myself, so even something like that where you write it down, it's a visual, cool breakdown of how you've done it as well. Maybe after this discussion, right, this could be one of many discussions, right, which I think it's really great about CHCI is that we can continue this series, especially this topic, as we kind of delve deeper in. So that's great.
Librada, if you wanted to email it to me, I can go ahead and share it with the group that's here. I'll be sending a follow-up email. I'll be sharing Mario's presentation. I've been keeping track of the chat and some of the resources y'all have been sharing as well. So I'll be sharing that as well.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you all. The next part is, again, 5 key highlights. Again, I know with time and everything, but just kind of quick snapshot. And again, we'll share this PowerPoint, so I won't go everything text to text. But when we think about 5 ways of building resiliency, different definitions, different views of it, right? For many of our different experiences. One key is always to think positive. There's more specifics into that, but I know it's not just as simple as, it's gonna be okay, right? There's so many things that go on in life that it's not as simple. And at the same time, acknowledging that there are little bits of that we can still take away. Not to say it's gonna 100% solve the issue, but one of many ways when we think about resiliency is kind of that positive mindset. When we think about obstacles that come our way, kind of trying to dispel the negative thoughts, right? That kind of start coming all at once, right? Something's happening in our lives that we didn't really plan for, that isn't as anything that we would want in our lives, but still happens. How do we still stay concentrated on the ultimate goal, the ultimate end result that you're looking for? So I think that's one of many. If we go to the next slide, please. Looking after yourself. I think this is a common thing that many of you all have shared, right? Taking care of yourselves, grounding yourselves, finding your own ways to do your own self-care. And I know many of you have already shared in the chat, there's your own different methods. Some could be going for long walks, some can be a specific yoga instructor, some could be having desserts, salty snacks, etc., podcasts. But being able to really look out after yourself is really important. Meditation is also one that was highlighted. Using our support network. I think even a network like this, CHCI, us in this chat, of being able, if folks, whoever wants to share content information, wants to have one-on-ones, right? We talked about the West Coast to DC, building your own networks and what that looks like, and asking for folks if they want to be able to come together in community, right? The worst thing someone can say is, "Oh, I can," or "I'm busy," but just to be able to reach out, it goes a long way. So utilizing your networks, we have one here already, but anything that we can do to help empower one another and support. And sometimes it could also be something as simple as listening to each other, right? The active listening component, just being a guide, someone to take thoughts for, right? To be a leaning shoulder to talk about what's going on in our lives, working towards a goal. When we think about maybe CHCI, for example, we think about doing our fellowship or our internship or our summer experiences, whichever program, right? As an example, we're working towards a goal. We always know that wherever we are in our lives, this is preparing us for the next phase in our life, whether that's personal, whether that's professional. Maybe you're thinking about going back to school. Maybe you're thinking about moving, maybe a different job, maybe taking on a new hobby, a new activity, gaining a new skill set, trying out something new that you haven't before, but there's always a goal, whatever that may be for you. And going back to the being kind to yourself, not putting that extra pressure, and finding ways to release that pressure on which way works best for you. And of course, seeking help. It's okay to ask for help. Knowing that asking for help is not a weakness, it's a strength. Knowing that sometimes we need folks to delegate work, not take it all on. And then even when we think about intergenerational and how many folks have been raised, from my own experience, right? I think about being first gen, having immigrant parents, always feeling like you have to support and make them proud and do the extra work and, take on all these things, and you don't have time for ask for help because you're too busy, right? But being able to get away from that, right, and ask for help. So seek help. That's mentors, that's going to therapy, building community, having discussions, sharing, delegating if we're thinking about work. But the right support can help, especially when it comes to life-changing situations. We'll open it back up for folks. Any insights, thoughts, key takeaways? And again, I know we'll be sharing all this information, but I just want to make sure folks had a chance to share anything, other insights.
I just put in the chat the Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck is always a really good resource and model, just because it teaches, especially like the power of yet, or understanding how we view things, but also in a manner that's not detrimental to ourselves. So,
I love this. Great. No, thank you, Guillermo. Fantastic. Any additional? Perfect. Well, if there's any additional comments, thoughts, again, feel free to drop it in the chat. Any other resources? I know, thank you, Pati. We'll be sharing this to the group, and I definitely see this as one of many conversations. I hope we can continue this discussion, this topic, as we delve deeper in. And of course, any suggestions you have, I would say just lean on the CHCI staff if there's any topics you'd like to bring to light to our fantastic alumni and audience. I'll share my information. Again, feel free to reach out if you like. My email, same as LinkedIn. Anything I can do to be of help. And I myself would love to reach out to you all to build community, continue conversations, continue to share our self-care practices. I'm always eager to learn more. And again, I learned from so many of you already from the podcast and the resources and the activities in the books.
I just want to say thank you, because we do need to normalize this. Sometimes it takes a catastrophe to become vulnerable and open up. And then that's when people, like, someone always has to do it to generate that domino effect. And so being proactive, being courageous to be vulnerable, and hopefully, just a little bit at a time to normalize it, right? And so, thank you for putting this together, and Fati, and looking forward to learning and hearing, participating in more of this type of series related to that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adriana. And yeah, thank you everyone as well. And I'll hand it over to Pati for closing.
Just want to thank you, Mario, for sharing your time and talent with us this evening, and really providing a brave space for folks to show up authentically and with all the things that is the world and our responsibilities and all of that. For you to join us as well, and for all of the folks that joined us, appreciate that you shared space with us and shared a little bit about some of your self-care practices. And even while some of us have a path to go, it's always just getting started that's really important. And definitely echo Mario's comment. I just dropped in the chat a super quick survey. These always help us get a better sense of the type of topics that you would like for us to cover in these webinars. It is anonymous, so feel free to share candidly. And I will be shooting you all an email tomorrow with some of the resources that were shared here today as well, so that you have that. And if I don't get to connect with some of you until next year, happy holidays, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.